Earth 3.5 billion years ago looked a little bit different than today. No plants, no animals, no oxygen, or at least very little oxygen. It was pretty much just ooey gooey microbes. But although the microbes themselves were microscopic, what they built was much larger. Colonies of microbes worked together to build large layered structures strong enough to survive nearly 3.5 billion years of Earth's history. These structures are called stromatolites. Stromatolites, also sometimes referred to as microbial mats, are some of the oldest fossil evidence for life on Earth. And a brand new paper from GSA's journal Geology describes unexpectedly large stromatolites from 3.47 billion years ago. Okay, but before we get into this discovery and why it's significant, let's actually talk about what stromatolites actually are, how they form, and what they represent. So we already mentioned that stromatolites are layered rock structures built by microbial communities. But one might wonder, how are they rock structures if they're just made of microbes? In fact, how are they rigid or sturdy at all if they're just made of microbes? Well, actually, stromatolites are made of layers of rock because bacteria trap sediment and induce chemical precipitation, or the formation of minerals out of seawater, within these structures. So there's physical trapping of sediment grains going on because microbes produce sticky compounds that trap these grains. And if you picture a coastal environment like a beach, there's plenty of rock fragments and sand grains around. But another way they include rock in these structures is through inducing the chemical precipitation of new minerals within each layer of the mat structure. So you've got water within each layer because they're in these coastal shallow marine environments, and you've got the microbes, and the microbes kind of induce this microenvironment. Really, really cool. Different within each layer, actually. It's just, when you really look at these at a microscopic level, it's insane. But they cause these chemical conditions because they release certain compounds that induce the precipitation or formation of new crystals within each layer of the mat. And these crystals are key because these newly forming crystals are what cement together the stromatolite structure and make it really sturdy and rigid. One of the most famous modern examples of living stromatolites is in Shark Bay, Australia, a very salty and extreme environment. And the reason they used to be everywhere pretty much billions of years ago, and now they're limited to these pretty far off extreme environments, is because now they have predators. Grazing snails and fish eat them in most shallow marine environments on Earth today. So it's only in places where those predators can't survive that stromatolites still exist. But in the Archean, billions of years ago, before animals existed, these microbial mats grew freely, forming stromatolites across large areas of the seafloor. And that's why studying these ancient stromatolites is so important for our understanding of early Earth. I mean, these guys were pretty much the only macroscopic living things for billions of years. The oldest claimed stromatolites are around 3.7 billion years old, but those are a little bit more controversial. Most geoscientists agree that stromatolites were absolutely present by around 3.5 billion years ago. But until now, almost all known stromatolites from 3.5 billion years ago were really small, found in shallow water or evaporitic environments, and often associated with shorelines, tidal flats, and hydrothermal systems near land. And this led to the assumption that early life was mostly small and confined to shallow, near-shore environments. This new study, however, challenges that idea. The stromatolites in this study are large, about 1.5 meters in width and 0.8 meters in height, and found in a rock unit called Mount Atta basalt in Australia. They are the largest known stromatolites from this long ago in the Paleoarchean. And the fact that they were found among these basalts suggests that they grew directly on these pillow basalts, which represent lava that erupted and cooled underwater on the sea floor. But given how old and weathered these rocks are, the question we're always trying to ask before drawing any conclusions is, could these structures be non-biological? Well, the authors of the study lay out multiple lines of evidence that suggest that they were likely biological in origin. One, internal lamination. The domes are finely layered at a millimeter to centimeter scale, exactly what we'd expect from microbial mat growth. Two, there are tufted and wrinkled textures that closely resemble confirmed fossilized microbial mats seen in younger rocks. 3, there's syn-depositional growth, where the layers below the domes are flat and undisturbed, while the layers above drape over them, which tells us that these domes grew at the surface, not from later deformation. And 4, over-steepened sides. Some dome margins are nearly vertical, which would be very hard to explain without microbial binding holding sediment in place. Taken individually, each of these features could potentially be explained another way, but altogether, they are really strong evidence for actual stromatolites. But possibly the most interesting thing about these potential 3.5 billion year old stromatolites is the environment they grew in. The chemistry of these rocks tells us that the water that they formed in was anoxic, which makes sense when we think about Earth 3.5 billion years ago. No oxygen was around, so that's expected. But it also tells us that there was strong influence of hydrothermal fluids on the water's chemistry, and thus the rock's chemistry and what got preserved, and that there was very little continental influence, indicating that this was likely not a coastal environment, but more of an open ocean basalt-dominated seafloor. These findings challenge the assumptions that microbial mats were small and limited to shorelines in the Paleoarchean, and suggest that early ecosystems may have been hydrothermally fueled, which is really important, not just for our understanding of early life on Earth, but also for our search for life on other worlds. For example, this means that life may exist on the seafloor of ocean worlds like Enceladus or Europa, which are ice-covered moons of Saturn and Jupiter that have global liquid water oceans beneath their icy shells. And so needless to say, these results are super cool and have major implications. But if you know your geologic timescale, you may be wondering, if photosynthetic life existed this early, why didn't oxygen rise in the atmosphere for another billion years? For context, these super ancient stromatolites, which likely contained some of the earliest photosynthesizing organisms like cyanobacteria, were present by 3.5 to 3.7 billion years ago, as we mentioned. But the global rise in oxygen levels that we call the Great Oxidation Event didn't begin until around 2.4 billion years ago. So why did it take about 1 billion years for oxygen levels, which were produced by the photosynthesizers, to go up? Well, there's a lot to that question. I mean, first you have to have the stromatolites spread globally to cause a global rise in oxygen. But of course, you wouldn't assume that that would take 1 billion years. And based on the rock record, it likely didn't. They likely spread relatively quickly once they really started going. But a couple other things complicate that question. One, we can't automatically assume that the microbes involved in these early stromatolites were oxygenic photosynthesizers. In other words, oxygen-producing photosynthetic microbes. They may have been photosynthetic, but there are microbes that photosynthesize without producing oxygen. There's actually microbes that photosynthesize and produce other compounds rather than just oxygen. So we can't necessarily tell by the physical structures preserved as stromatolites in the fossil record what types of microbes were involved in those structures, unless there's really intricate details and structures preserved, organic structures preserved in those rocks, or chemical details, chemical isotopic signatures and other, biochemical signatures preserved in those rocks, which sometimes is the case, but typically not for super old rocks like these. That said, we do have some isotope evidence from like 3 billion years ago that does potentially suggest the existence of oxygen-producing photosynthetic life, like oxygen-producing photosynthetic cyanobacteria, by 3 billion years ago. So if we assume that is the case, what other reasons could there be for this big gap in time, even just 500 million years, from 3 billion years ago to 2.5 billion years ago, between when oxygen-producing photosynthesizers evolved and the Great Oxidation Event? Why was there that gap? The short answer is that ancient Earth was chemically very different from modern Earth. The chemicals in the ocean and atmosphere were very, what we call, reduced. They had tons of electrons, and oxygen loves electrons. And so when it started to be produced, it started reacting with all those chemicals, taking all their electrons and producing new chemicals, new compounds that were deposited instead of building up on its own as molecular oxygen. So it had to react with everything that was super heavily reduced before it could build up on its own. And one example of this is seen in banded iron formations, or BIFs. Early oceans were very rich in dissolved reduced iron, and any oxygen produced by microbes readily reacted with that iron, forming iron oxides that were deposited on the seafloor. And this explains why BIFs formed in abundance before and during the Great Oxidation Event, but stopped and didn't continue forming after, because theoretically, the oxygen reacted with all the readily available reduced dissolved iron and formed all that could form in a simplistic way. But a lot of you recently asked me, why are BIFs banded? And that is a question, along with tons of other BIF questions, that I will be answering, not me per se, but we will be answering in an upcoming deep dive interview with Jesse from Planet GEO and a BIF expert that we'll have on to talk about all things BIFs, how exactly they form, why they're banded, why they suddenly stopped forming, whether they formed later after they supposedly were supposed to stop and why that was, whether they formed earlier than they were quote unquote supposed to, and why that might have been. All these mysteries surrounding BIFs will be, well, maybe not answered, but talked about in this upcoming deep dive that we will do next week. So come back next week for that video. And until then, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.